Hey everyone, welcome to Motor Psychology from wherever you are on this planet. My name's Jonathan, and if it's your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be showing the removal of a power steering cylinder from a C3 Corvette. So you'll see me underneath the vehicle, getting the power steering cylinder off of the steering mechanisms and then ready for a refurb. So I'm going to show you the process that I use and some of the tools that I used, and hopefully you'll find it interesting. At a later time, I'm going to be refurbishing this power steering cylinder, or if that doesn't work, I'll replace it. So the refurb is going to be a paint and a replace of the seals and O-rings in the cylinder. So I'm going to put that in video number 2. So stick around and enjoy the video. What you see here is the power steering cylinder, which I've highlighted in red. Before I take this off, I am removing the other side of the tie rod end from the power steering relay rod. I'm using a pickle fork here to separate the tie rod end from the power steering relay rod. Now I'll be working on removing the power steering cylinder ball joint from the power steering relay rod. So the power steering cylinder has a built-in ball joint. I'll be checking the quality of this built-in ball joint as part of my refresh and refurb of this power steering cylinder. Now I'm going ahead and removing the power steering lines from the power steering cylinder. So basically using a brake line tool that fits, and once these lines come out, a whole bunch of power steering fluid is going to drop out, plus empty out of the cylinder as well. But you got to do this in order to get the power steering cylinder off. Gotta let the power steering fluid drain out of this thing. Working in small, tight spaces here, so it takes a while to get this power steering fluid line off the power steering cylinder, and then in the background you can hear the other line draining away. So there's quite a lot of fluid that eventually comes out from both the lines and the power steering cylinder, and it could be a messy job. So make sure that you have a oil pan or some sort of pan to collect the fluid while you do this. Let that drain for a while. This is just a different view of the power steering cylinder as I pop it off the steering relay rod. And also I'm going to squeeze out some of the power steering fluid from the cylinder, which it actually has quite a lot in it, so I was pretty surprised about that. Just closing up the steering cylinder here. take it off and rebuild it. Initially, what seems to be a pretty messy job doesn't really take too long before most of the fluid is out and you're good to go. This is when I hope all the people that run up and admire the car when you're stopped at a stoplight or at a donut store or something like that, they appreciate all the hard work that goes into keeping these on the road and ready to go. I will be replacing all the power steering lines that go to the power steering cylinder and also the power steering control valve. So that's coming up soon, so stick around for that. All right, let's get this thing off. I'm in the process of removing the power steering cylinder support bracket, which is attached to the left-hand side of the frame with 4 retaining bolts. So it's pretty straightforward to remove. Taking this entire thing off so I can clean the mount properly. A lot easier to do it this way, I think. One out. And one more to go, which is up here. Perfect. Clean some rust up and should be good to go. Put the washers and the nuts back on so I don't lose them. It's really crazy for me taking these parts off that I know have not been apart since sometime in 1977. So it's interesting and it's good to get them off and it's good to get ready to restore these things. Now I have the power steering cylinder off, more or less. Be able to take this off. Be able to take it off here shortly. Well, I decided to take this off on the ground, so it's a lot easier to get a handle on it. And the first thing that I need to do is to take another cotter pin out. So that seems to be the norm. Once I get the cotter pin out, it's a matter of taking the castle nut off and then separating the power steering cylinder from the mounting bracket. So that's what I'm doing right now, and it really didn't take that long. Shoot on some PB Blaster. Let that sit for a while. Come back and try it another time. I'm getting ready to take the castle nut off the power steering cylinder. It's really interesting. The shaft of the power steering cylinder has a nice notch on it that you can fit a wrench on, and that will allow you to hold onto the shaft while you torque the castle nut off with your impact wrench. I was finally able to get that out. We can take it off the bracket here. It's always interesting to me to try and figure out how to get these things apart. And you think it may work one way, and then you have to find another way to get it apart. So it's kind of cool. Here we go. Perfect. Save those parts. Clean that sucker up. Stick this back on here. That's the power steering cylinder out, ready to get cleaned and refurbished or replaced. I thought I'd show the initial cleaning of this part and the bracket just to see where I am with this item and whether or not it's worth refurbishing and putting in the new seals and stuff like that. So here's how I clean it. I'm using some brake cleaner, and I'm also using some orange degreaser and a parts cleaning brush and a small scraper as well. Just spraying this down to get rid of any grease that's on it. I sped this video up to be 7 times the normal speed, so it still shows you that there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of spraying, there's a lot of digging out old grease and oil, there's a lot of using the brush to get it as clean as possible, and then rinsing and repeat 3 or 4 times. But when the process is all done, at least you get the parts that are clean and free of the dirt, grime, and grease, and then you can make a decision on whether or not it's worth repairing or restoring, refreshing the part. For me, once I was done, I decided that I'm going to definitely replace the seals, wire brush it, and paint the power steering cylinder and see how it really looks and whether or not it looks functional. Because ultimately I want to keep as many original parts with this C3 as possible. After all of that, there is definitely a legitimate original C3 part that is in good enough condition to restore to look more or less brand new. In my opinion, you really have to have a passion for this, a long-term vision, and also the mindset to stay positive and put in the work, spend the time and attention to detail so that at the end of the process you're going to get the results that are going to make the effort and dedication worthwhile. Give it a wire brush and paint it. Put in some new bushings, it'll be good. Same with this. Do a quick wire brush on it. Maybe bend that back in place. It's a little bit bent. And that ball joint seems to work okay. It's good. And then I'll wire brush this and then repaint it. And I'm going to put new seals in on the end too. So those seals are going to be replaced next. There, that's one more old greasy part that is still old but not greasy anymore. And that completes part one of changing a power steering cylinder in a C3 Corvette. In the next video I'm going to be wire brushing and painting and putting in new seals and also a new bushing in the power steering cylinder bracket. So that should be pretty interesting. Hopefully you learned something in this video, you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider hitting subscribe and the like button and also sharing with a friend. So we'll catch you all in part 2.